When an outsider wants to marry an Amish daughter, he's not just asking for her hand, he's asking to join one of America's most closed communities. The father's response reveals traditions about acceptance, testing, and family loyalty that outsiders never imagine. Initial suspicion. The first reaction from an Amish father when an outsider expresses interest in his daughter is rarely welcoming. Years of community isolation create natural suspicion about outside influences that might threaten family stability. Questions arise immediately about the outsider's intentions, spiritual commitment, and understanding of Amish lifestyle demands. Fathers worry about their daughters leaving the community and abandoning faith traditions that have sustained generations. Testing period. Before any serious relationship discussions can begin, the outsider faces an extended testing period that evaluates character, commitment, and genuine understanding of Amish lifestyle requirements. The testing involves observing how the outsider handles physical work, responds to community expectations, and demonstrates respect for traditional values during extended visits. Fathers watch carefully for signs of genuine spiritual commitment versus temporary infatuation with different lifestyle choices. Work assignments become character evaluations as fathers observe the outsider's attitude toward manual labor and community service obligations. Cultural learning. Understanding Amish culture requires more than reading books or watching documentaries. It demands immersion in daily life patterns that most outsiders find challenging and sometimes overwhelming during the adaptation process that determines relationship viability. The outsider must learn Pennsylvania Dutch language, traditional customs, religious practices, and community social structures that govern every aspect of family life and spiritual development within established cultural frameworks. Language learning becomes particularly crucial because family conversations, religious services, and community interactions occur primarily in Pennsylvania Dutch. Fathers evaluate the outsider's progress in cultural adaptation while watching for signs of genuine appreciation versus superficial acceptance of traditions that require lifelong commitment and spiritual transformation. Cultural learning includes understanding gender roles, family hierarchies, and community expectations that differ dramatically from mainstream society and require complete lifestyle adjustment for successful integration. Work proving. Understanding Amish culture requires more than reading books or watching documentaries. It demands immersion in daily life patterns that most outsiders find challenging during the adaptation process. The outsider must learn Pennsylvania Dutch language, traditional customs, religious practices, and community social structures that govern family life and spiritual development. Language learning becomes particularly crucial because family conversations, religious services, and community interactions occur primarily in Pennsylvania Dutch. Fathers evaluate the outsider's progress in cultural adaptation while watching for signs of genuine appreciation versus superficial acceptance of traditions. Cultural learning includes understanding gender roles, family hierarchies, and community expectations that differ dramatically from mainstream society. Community acceptance. Amish fathers judge potential sons-in-law primarily through work performance rather than romantic gestures, educational credentials, or financial status that characterize courtship evaluation in mainstream society. The outsider must demonstrate competence in agricultural work, traditional crafts, or family business operations that support community economic stability through practical skills rather than theoretical knowledge. Physical endurance, learning ability, and willingness to accept instruction become more important than previous career achievements. Seasonal work cycles provide extended evaluation opportunities as fathers observe the outsider's response to demanding agricultural schedules, weather challenges, and physical requirements that define traditional work ethic. Success in work proving demonstrates character qualities that fathers value more than romantic compatibility, including persistence, humility, teachability, and commitment to community welfare over individual achievement. Language requirements. Pennsylvania Dutch fluency becomes a non-negotiable requirement that demonstrates serious commitment to cultural integration and family communication patterns that define authentic community membership and spiritual participation within established traditional frameworks. Learning Pennsylvania Dutch requires more than basic vocabulary acquisition. It demands understanding cultural concepts, religious terminology, and community expressions that carry spiritual and social meanings impossible to translate directly into English without losing essential cultural significance and community connection. Fathers evaluate language progress as evidence of genuine commitment versus superficial effort that indicates temporary interest rather than lifelong dedication to community membership and cultural preservation that requires complete linguistic transformation. Family conversations, religious instruction, and community interactions depend on Pennsylvania Dutch fluency for full participation. The language learning process typically takes years of dedicated study and daily practice with native speakers who provide correction, cultural context, and spiritual guidance that supports both linguistic and cultural development within traditional community frameworks. Fathers often test language comprehension through religious discussions, community service coordination, and family business communications that require fluency for effective participation and demonstrate readiness for marriage and community integration that extends beyond romantic relationship into cultural transformation. Religious integration. Spiritual conversion represents the most crucial aspect of outsider acceptance because Amish identity centers on religious commitment rather than ethnic heritage or cultural preference, requiring genuine faith transformation that affects every aspect of daily life and community participation. The outsider must demonstrate understanding of Anabaptist theology, adult baptism significance, and church discipline expectations that govern community life and individual spiritual development within established religious frameworks that define authentic membership and spiritual commitment. Religious education involves extensive biblical study, church history learning, and theological discussion with church leaders. Fathers evaluate spiritual sincerity through observation of prayer life, scripture study habits, and response to religious instruction that reveals genuine faith development versus superficial compliance with community expectations for marriage approval. Church attendance, religious discussion participation, and spiritual growth demonstration become ongoing evaluation criteria. The conversion process includes understanding pacifist principles, simple living requirements, and separation from worldly influences that conflict with mainstream society values and require significant lifestyle changes for successful spiritual integration. Religious integration affects everything from entertainment choices to business practices, creating comprehensive life transformation that fathers evaluate carefully before approving marriage. Relationships that involve spiritual leadership responsibilities and community religious participation that extends throughout lifetime. Commitment to faith and community membership. Family dynamics. Understanding complex Amish family structures requires navigating multi-generational relationships, extended family obligations, and community kinship networks that influence every aspect of married life and spiritual development within traditional frameworks that prioritize family harmony and collective welfare. Fathers observe how outsiders interact with grandparents, siblings, and extended family members during community gatherings, family work projects, and religious celebrations that reveal respect for family hierarchy and traditional authority structures that govern community life and spiritual leadership patterns. Family relationship skills become indicators of marriage readiness and community integration potential. The outsider must understand family decision-making processes, conflict resolution methods, and mutual aid obligations that connect individual families to broader community networks and support systems that provide economic security and spiritual guidance throughout life challenges and seasonal work cycles. Family loyalty expectations extend beyond immediate nuclear family to include extended relatives and community connections. Marriage brings immediate integration into complex family networks that include business partnerships, agricultural cooperation, and spiritual leadership responsibilities that require understanding of traditional gender roles, generational respect patterns, and community service obligations that characterize authentic family participation within established cultural frameworks. Fathers evaluate the outsider's ability to navigate these relationships successfully while maintaining respect for traditional values and contributing positively to family harmony and community stability that affects multiple generations of family members and community relationships. Economic expectations. Economic integration within Amish communities requires understanding traditional approaches to work, business ownership, and financial management that differ dramatically from mainstream economic practices and require complete adaptation to community economic patterns and mutual aid systems. Fathers evaluate the outsider's attitude towards simple living, material possessions, and economic priorities that emphasize community welfare over individual wealth accumulation and challenge mainstream economic values about success, consumption, and financial independence that conflict with traditional approaches to stewardship and economic cooperation within established community frameworks. The outsider must demonstrate ability to support family through traditional work methods, agricultural production, or approved business activities that align with community economic patterns and religious values about material possessions and spiritual priorities that govern economic decision-making and resource allocation within traditional frameworks. Economic skills and work ethic become marriage readiness indicators. Understanding mutual aid obligations requires learning about community economic support systems, shared resource management, and collective economic security that provides family financial stability through community cooperation rather than individual insurance, investment, or government assistance programs that conflict with traditional self-reliance and community interdependence values. Business ownership expectations include understanding community standards for appropriate business types, customer relationships, and economic practices that maintain traditional values while providing family economic security and community economic contribution that supports collective welfare and cultural preservation efforts. Fathers evaluate economic compatibility carefully because family financial security depends on successful integration into community economic patterns and mutual support systems that characterize traditional approaches to economic stability and resource management. Generational challenges. Navigating relationships between different generations requires understanding traditional respect patterns, authority structures, and cultural transmission methods that govern family interaction and community leadership within established frameworks that emphasize wisdom, experience, and spiritual maturity over individual preferences. The outsider faces particular challenges in relating to older community members who may harbor stronger suspicions about outside influences and cultural changes that threaten traditional practices and spiritual values that define authentic community identity and religious commitment within established cultural frameworks that resist external pressures and social changes. Fathers observe how outsiders respond to elder authority, traditional instruction, and cultural correction that helps maintain community standards and spiritual practices across generational transitions that require ongoing cultural transmission and religious education for community continuity and spiritual preservation. Elder relationships become indicators of cultural adaptation success. Younger generation acceptance may come more easily, but creates different challenges related to peer relationships, social activities, and cultural influence that require careful navigation to maintain traditional values while building community relationships that support marriage success and family integration within established community frameworks. The generational balance requires demonstrating respect for traditional wisdom while contributing to community continuity through younger generation leadership development and spiritual growth that strengthens traditional practices rather than challenging established values and cultural patterns that define authentic community membership. Fathers evaluate the outsider's ability to bridge generational differences successfully while maintaining traditional values and contributing to community stability across multiple generations of family and community relationships that require ongoing cultural preservation and spiritual development.